call the Monday, October 15th meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll.
Mr. Green?
Here.
Mr. Lyda?
Here.
Dr. Middlebrooks?
Here.
Mr. Murphy?
Here.
Mr. Posey? Here. Mr. Shaw?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here. Next, if the clerk please provide the invocation and Mr. Posey the pledge.
Please join me in a moment of silence for the victims of Hurricane Michael. Lord, our hearts go out to everyone affected by this terrible storm. For those who lost loved ones, for those who are still unaccounted for, and for those who are working so diligently to find them. As we all watch all of this unfold, we are reminded of our blessings and the precious gift of life. We pray for those who are searching for survivors and for all the volunteers who are trying to meet the needs of the many people who lost everything. May your peace be with them as they begin the journey of recovery. In your name we pray, amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next point of order is approval of the minutes.
President, I move for approval of minutes without reading. Second.
We have a motion second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed nay. The ayes have it. Next in the report section, we have Allery May, candidate, Circuit Court Judge, Criminal Division, place 27. Come on down. I guess that means there's at least 26 ahead of you. Could you please speak into the microphone? That way those here and the 30,000 watching at home on YouTube.
All right, thank you. Good evening, and thank you for having me. My name is Alaric May. I am a candidate for Jefferson County Circuit Court Criminal Division, place 27. That's the seat that Judge Vincent is currently holding, but she is retiring from it, so it's going to be an open seat. Just a little bit about me, and I won't take long, I promise. I am first and foremost a God-fearing Christian. I am the married father of 7 children, so I'm raising my own community. I am a graduate of the University of Alabama undergrad and the University of Florida Law School. I've been practicing here in Alabama for the last 23 years. Over those 23 years, I've tried every case on the Alabama statute, and I'm one of the few attorneys that can stand up and tell you that in the state of Alabama. If it's on the criminal statute, I have literally tried it. From your high-profile capital murder cases down literally to trying a jaywalking case. So if it's there, I've done it. For 18 of those years, I've been either a full-time municipal judge, a part-time municipal judge, a part-time circuit judge, or a part-time district court judge. So I'm not asking you to try me out. I'm asking to be elected to a seat that I've already held. I'm asking to do a job that I've already done. So I'm asking that on November 6th, you will remember Alaric May. If you can't remember the first name, vote May in November. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have Felicia Stewart, candidate for House District 46. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing pretty good so far. It's early yet.
We've got time for it to go south. I am Felicia Stewart. I am running for state representative in District 46, which includes, in terms of the Hoover voters, most of Bluff Park and the Preserve areas. I am a graduate of Spring Hill College, a bachelor's degree, and my MBA is from SMU out in Dallas. And for the last 20 years or so, I've been in the business world. I was vice president of sales for an office equipment software company in Texas, and I've been in market development for a medical device firm here in Alabama until recently, when roughly 18 months ago, I decided to pursue public service full-time. So I've been a full-time candidate for the last 18 months. And I am running in this district because I expect more from my state. I'm a native Alabamian, and I love it here. I have twin 7-year-old daughters that I want to feel proud to be from here, and I expect more than the scandal and the corruption and the lack of competence and the lack of priorities that we've seen in Montgomery for too long across the board. And for me, I think we need more leaders in Montgomery that kind of fit into 3 buckets. Number one, that are ethical. That should be pretty basic, but that's no longer the case. Not just telling the truth, but also not being beholden to certain special interest groups, and wanting to be held accountable, and wanting to be transparent and engage with the citizens that they represent. And 2, they're there to do the work. This is not an easy job. We have very complex issues facing our state, and we have not done enough to move the needle in those areas. And we need people who are dedicated full-time to public service to roll up their sleeves and start solving those problems. And number 3, that are there to focus on the right priorities. And I feel like too much of our time in Montgomery lately has been spent on red meat, divisive, pandering issues that consumes our legislative time and does precious little to improve the lives of average Alabamians. And that's what I'm here to do. District 46 is long and winding. It's a little bit of Mountain Brook, a little bit of Homewood, and a little bit of Hoover. And in the last year, we have made over 5,000 voter contacts, either on their front porches or on the phones in our Hoover areas. We have had events on Park Avenue and Shades Crest Road and near Prince of Peace and at the community center in Bluff Park, and attended races in the preserve and events at Aldridge Gardens. I am committed to learning about this community, to getting to know the residents here, and to listening to the people and what's important to you guys. So I hope that you'll give me a fair chance and look at us at stewart4alabama.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, we've got some appointments to the beautification board.
Thank you. This is one of the really great things we get to do, and that's talk about how wonderful our beautification board is, and all the great things that they do for our city each and every year. Not only do they give their time, but this a lot of physical effort goes into what they do. Decorating our city hall and making sure that we have programs out there for picking up trash. Christmas house, they just do a wonderful job here. Just many, many things that they do all through the year. Served a lot of pie, I think, at Happy Hoover Day this year as well, and we appreciate that. So we have tonight 5 ladies that we would like to reappoint to the beautification board under the direction now of President Betty Daigle, who is the new president, and she takes over for Ms. Ann McAdams, who has done just an outstanding job. And thank you for all that you've done, and spends an enormous amount of time at City Hall and just out in the community, and she's a great, great servant of our city, so thank you.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
could we get her to stand so we can recognize her?
Absolutely.
Thanks, sir.
And that's why I appreciate you doing that. And our new president is Betty Daigle, so Betty, will you stand up as well? That's Betty Rocato Daigle. She made sure that I was not pronouncing my name correctly when we first met several years ago.
No relation?
We probably are related. I don't know. Probably, I don't know how you couldn't be. But anyhow, we're grateful for her service as well. So I would ask for Jennifer Gregory and Rebecca Hassey and Diane Ray and Mary Ross Searcy, if they would come up here and let's, and then they are going to be reappointed for to stand in front of the Hoover. And Donna Spencer is also being reappointed, and she is unable to attend tonight. And then we have, they are being reappointed for 3 years, and then we have 2 members, Ms. Ann Lusko and Robin Henderson. If y'all would come up, I would appreciate it. Just stand before us, and then our president come up as well. And so, as we have done in the past, I would appreciate a vote of concurrence by this body. If y'all would take that time right now, I'd appreciate it.
President, I move for concurrence of the appointments.
Second.
Have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Thank you, ladies. All right, next, we have resolution 587418, Corley.
This resolution authorizes the mayor to execute an amendment to the street paving and resurfacing contract with Dunn Construction Company, Inc., to allow the use of subcontractors in the completion of the work.
Move for approval of resolution 587418.
Second.
Have a motion, second, any questions from the council? Any audience? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item number 7, first is a public hearing for the abatement of public nuisance due to weeds and/or grass. Favorite part of your day?
Yes, sir. I believe this is where we read this first.
I guess we can go ahead and have a reading of resolution 587718.
The property located at the following address has an overabundance of grass and weeds present thereon and presents a threat to the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of the city of Hoover. 2335 Deerwood Road. This resolution declares the overabundance of grass and weeds present on the above property as a public nuisance and orders the abatement thereof as provided under Alabama law.
Mr. President, I move for approval of resolution 587718.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We also are having a public hearing first. Anybody here to speak for or against? Mr. Mack, do you have anything to present?
Yes, sir. The photos that you have were taken this afternoon, and they still have the weeds over 12 inches, so they're in violation. And with your vote, the city will cut their property.
Has the city started to contract out any of these cleanings?
I believe they've looked into getting some, companies that can do it, but we haven't actually used it yet. It's still public works.
All right. I guess we will conclude the public hearing, and we've already got a motion and a second for the resolution. Any comments or questions from the council? Any from the audience? Hearing seen none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Resolution 5879, Mr. Corley.
Properties located at the following addresses have an overabundance of grass or weeds present thereon and present a threat to the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of the city of Hoover. 2054 Wood Meadow Circle, 2033 Russet Woods Trail. This resolution declares the overabundance of grass and weeds present on the property as public nuisances and orders the abatement thereof as provided under Alabama law.
Mr. President, I move for approval of resolution 587918.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions from the council? Mr. Mack, these pictures are true and current.
Photos were taken today showing the properties. You'll see the front yards are cut on both of them, but the rear yards are overgrown, and we have secret lines on it.
Very good. Anyone from the audience? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item number 9, resolution 588018, Mr. Corley.
This resolution declares the following property surplus and used as a trade-in: OCD colorway 620 plotter and PC4 scanner bearing the serial numbers listed in the resolution.
Move for approval of resolution 588018.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any comments or questions from the council? Mr. Mayor, would you like to give a short explanation? This was correcting an error, was it not? Oh, the surplus, I'm looking at the wrong one. Okay. This is for surplus, so we can get a better deal on the printer. questions from the audience? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Now, resolution 5881-18, Mr. Corley.
This resolution authorizes the mayor to execute an amended community services agreement with the Hoover Bells in the amount of $5,000.
Move for approval of resolution 5881-18.
Second.
Motion second. Any comments or questions from the council? Mayor, this is just correcting an error in the budget process. Anything from the audience? Seeing, hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Resolution 5882-18, Mr. Corley.
This resolution authorizes the mayor to execute a renewal of the casualty stop loss insurance agreement with Argonaut or Alteris Insurance Company for 1 year and authorizes the mayor to execute the necessary documents to bind coverage.
Move for approval of resolution 5882-18.
Second.
Have a motion second. Any comments or questions from the council? Debbie, this is renewal of the current vendor, correct?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Anything from the audience? Seeing, hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Resolution 5883-18, Mr. Corley.
This resolution authorizes the mayor to execute an amendment to the professional services agreement with Hub International and Gulf South Limited Incorporated to provide insurance consulting services for property, casualty, and workers' compensation insurance and related insurance and brokerage services. The amendment extends the existing agreement for a period of 1 year.
Mr. President, I move for approval of resolution 5883-18.
Second.
Have a motion second. Any comments or questions from the council? Debbie, once again, this is the current vendor being extended. Any comments or questions from the audience? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Resolution 5884-18, Mr. Corley.
This resolution authorizes the mayor to execute a memorandum of understanding with the Jefferson County Commission with regard to debris removal and monitoring services.
Mr. President, I move for approval of resolution 5884-18.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. For those who were not here Thursday, this is basically an agreement. There is no funding required by the city, but it allows to tie to Jefferson County debris removal under certain circumstances. Any questions from the council? Any from the audience? Seeing, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Resolution 5885-18, Corley.
The city entered into a development agreement on March 7th, 2018 with River Chase Lorna LP to provide an incentive and to promote Whole Foods to open for business in the River Chase Village development. River Chase Lorna desires to assign and transfer all of its interests in the development agreement to PREA River Chase Village LLC. This resolution authorizes the assignment of this development agreement by River Chase Lorna LP to PREA River Chase Village LLC and authorizes the mayor to execute an assignment and assumption of development agreement related thereto.
Mr. President, I move for approval of resolution 5885-18.
Second.
Much second. Any comments or questions from the council? This is basically a new owner for the center and allowing the purchaser to be able to use the unused credits from the abatements provided to the previous owner. Any questions from the council? Any from the audience? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Resolution 5887-18, Mr. Corley.
This resolution authorizes the mayor to execute a managed print services agreement with Ameritech Document Solutions.
Mr. President,
Now read from the wrong place.
I move for approval of resolution 5886-18.
Second.
Very good.
We got you straight.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions from the council? Any from the audience? Seeing, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Resolution 5887-18, Mr. Corley.
This resolution establishes a temporary moratorium on the issuance of business licenses for payday loan or advance, car title loan, check cashing, or cash and go, pawn shop, and vape shop businesses while the city researches, develops, and enacts its comprehensive plan and updates its zoning ordinance.
Open for a motion.
Yes, sir. Motion for Approval of resolution 588718.
Second.
A motion and a second. Comments or questions from the council?
Yes, sir, Mr. President. I'm bringing forth this resolution for a temporary moratorium for the aforementioned businesses. I've received a number of calls from vape store consumers this weekend. I just want to reiterate that this temporary moratorium will not affect current businesses already in place. I think a lot of people were confused by that. It's just new businesses coming into the city. They'll put a temporary moratorium on those licenses.
And in the resolution also, they have the right to be able to relocate within the city and not lose their license.
Council, is that correct? I don't think that's correct.
That's the way I read the resolution.
I think a relocation would require a new business license, and therefore would not be approved. I'll let legal.
It says unless they, it does not impact them unless they cease operation for a period of 60 days or more, have an expired business license not timely renewed, or seeks a change in location within the city of Hoover. In any of the foregoing events, the business shall then be subject to the moratorium.
Okay, so item 3 allows or disallows? Okay, I read it wrong.
Mr. President, I will say that many of us campaigned on protecting our older established neighborhoods. I feel like this resolution is one step in fulfilling that promise. As the city gets ready to approve our master plan going forward, I understand that it may require, and we've set money aside to rewrite our zoning ordinances and possibly our subdivision regulations. And this will just give us time until that is completed to properly define these types of businesses. That's all.
Any other comments from the council?
Yes, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
With tremendous respect for Dr. Miller Brooks, I know this comes from a good place, but, you know, we were elected and given quite a bit of power, not as much power as people think we have, but the ability to regulate businesses this way is an important power. And I think we've crossed the edge, we've crossed the boundary to using that power with this ordinance, or this resolution, and I'll tell you why. If you read the details of what read the resolution, the text of what we're doing. Whereas the city has experienced a proliferation of businesses. Now, the wording's a little tricky there because it says a proliferation of businesses. It doesn't say these businesses. I assume it means these businesses. Later on, it talks about overdevelopment of these businesses and things. But, you know, last count, as of today, we had 15 affected businesses in this out of 4,000. And I know the body art shops were removed because we had 0, which I assume is there a reason we removed those, or is it just another First Amendment thing? Or, okay. I mean, so in that way, it would be very hard to say we have a proliferation of 0 because there's nothing in that category. But I have to say that the premise here that we have a proliferation of these businesses is, I don't think it crosses that threshold. I think it's an error to say that we have a proliferation of these businesses, or that we have overdevelopment of these businesses. So we are basing a decision to use the power of government to stop a business based on what I believe is a false premise. If you look at the next thing, we talk about effectively limit the ability to attract diverse types of businesses. I see no evidence in any literature that says that these businesses prevent you from attracting these types of businesses. Indeed, if you look around the state, we talked about attracting STEM businesses. The mayor has talked about that. Huntsville, Mobile, Birmingham, none of them have any moratoriums. None of them have regulations. They're all based on their zoning code. And I would argue that they have a pretty good time attracting STEM-based businesses. In fact, Shipped, which was a big headline for Birmingham, just had their big expansion, over 1,200 jobs, and there are 3 of these businesses within 4 city blocks where Shipped is located. I know there's been some discussion of restaurants. We want, sole proprietor restaurants. We want trendy restaurants. Man, I'm not even going to read off the list of Avondale and some of the other places in Huntsville and other places, but every trendy restaurant I was able to find had a number of these businesses within blocks of what they are, or where they are. Highlands Grill downtown who's world famous now, has 3 of these businesses within blocks. So I just, again, that's another premise that I find to be false, and we're about to execute the power of government based on these false premises. One thing I do agree with is that the council finds it's necessary and proper and in the public interest to reassess its present zoning ordinance, policies and procedures concerning the location of payday loan investment, et cetera, et cetera. I campaigned on protecting older neighborhoods. I live in an older neighborhood, and I live in a neighborhood that's close to where some of these businesses are going in. And we actually, in planning and zoning, and we're talking with some of the council members, we put together a change in our zoning ordinance that would, and it passed unanimously, that would regulate some locations, working with our city planner who's worked on these types of zoning regs before, very similar to what Huntsville did as far as where it's zoned and how it works. And that's coming next month. So we have an opportunity to fix our zoning ordinance, regulate these businesses, not prohibit them, but put them in places that are far away from neighborhoods, so they don't end up on a corner right next to a residential zone. Puts them in areas where the C2 zoning is a little close to residences. There's some protections there. And I'm sure you'll be hearing more of this, but it's very effective in maintaining a pro-business environment while protecting, as Ms. Wright had said in the last meeting, protecting our older neighborhoods. Like I said, I live in one. Of course, it's not just a good idea. I also live there. So anyway, so when you look at these premises that we're relying on, arbitrary and capricious, the words you hear in various legal terms. I'm not a lawyer, but we're told not to take action in those ways. If we got things that aren't supported by reason or fact, which I believe this resolution is not, if we have things that we're just doing because we want to, because we think it's a good idea, that is the definition of arbitrary and capricious. I would encourage my colleagues to vote no on this, and let's revisit the zoning code change, which is very simple and very effective next month, and we'll fix it. Any problems that are there, we can fix them. But I think this is abuse of government power in what we're doing.
Anyone else?
Mr. President,
Mr. Lytle.
Shaw, thank you for your eloquent comments. You did a lot of research on this, and I appreciate that very, very much. I did not hear an answer to your question. I would like to know why tattoo shops were removed from the list.
As Mr. Shaw pointed out, there's 0 currently in the city.
So I guess tattoo parlors in there, we'd be trying to solve a problem that doesn't really exist, right?
Well, if you go back to Mr. Shaw's argument about a non-proliferation of city or businesses of that type, or if you go back to his argument about those being located near, say, Highlands Grill, I would argue that Highlands was there long before the bake stores came along and had established themselves pretty well entrenched into the neighborhood and their market. As far as proliferation of businesses, it may not be citywide, but if you drive down one road, you will definitely see a proliferation of those types of businesses in certain areas.
Thank you, Dr. Middlebrooks. Vaping has come along probably in more popularity since I came to the council in 2012. Payday loans have not. That's been a business that's been around since then. I've been tracking those. In fact, in 2012, I looked into this. There are currently, I think you said 6 payday loans in business today?
Yes.
You know how many there were in 2012? 6. This appears to be another big government solution looking for a problem. Mr. Shaw will introduce later, item 26 on our agenda, a resolution to alter our zoning to put better controls to protect older neighborhoods like I live in as well. I live in the old Green Valley area, and I'm proud to do so, and so I appreciate efforts that are there to protect older neighborhoods like I know me and my colleagues live in. This really is overreaching government. And I know it's been said a time or two that this does not impact existing businesses, but this absolutely does impact existing businesses. I hope we have some of those business owners. I know Mr. Topol is here. I see him there. I hope we have others in the audience as well. I hope you'll speak when the appropriate time comes, because this is going to impact your business. And if this passes, I want to be the first from the city of Hoover to apologize to you for creating what will be an incredible detriment to the future of your business. You've chosen to locate here. You've chosen to invest here. a fire were to destroy your business tonight, God forbid, and you were to wait 60 days to reopen, you're out of luck. You are not welcome here if this passes. That's what we're saying. I think that's a shame. This is a legal business that this city says is legal, but we're going to say because we don't like it, or maybe we don't use it, you're not welcome here. That's a very, very poor message to send. This city's never sent that message in over 50 years, as far as I know. I'm embarrassed about it, and if it passes, I want to be the first to say I'm sorry.
Posey, I think you were next.
I'm not,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I haven't yielded quite yet. I want to roll, Mr. President.
I thought you were just taking a deep breath, I guess.
The master plan Dr. Middlebrooks mentioned, I think, and I want to make sure of this, have each of us had the opportunity to have a meeting on the master plan?
Yes. It's about 5 inches thick.
It is thick. It'll take you a couple hours. I think we all now know the master plan does not address where certain businesses can go. It does not get down, and Mr. Mack, am I right in saying your master plan does not address where specific businesses can locate?
Specific businesses,
Thank you, sir. The master plan does not address that. So to say this, to say we're going to put a temporary moratorium on this for the master plan to be rolled out, quite frankly, is disingenuous, because we've seen the master plan. Perhaps if you've been to the first meeting of the rollout of the master plan, you too have seen it. It doesn't address it. That's not what the master plan's about. And don't be fooled about the word temporary. If this passes tonight, and it expires in 12 months, it will come up again, and it'll move to be passed again. Because there are those that just don't like the business. It's not enough not to patronize the business. They want everyone not to have access to this business. They want you not to be able to open this business. That's the shameful part of it. Mr. President, I yield. Thank you.
Mr. President, if I may respond to that.
Yes.
I prefer that Councilman Shaw not put my intentions, speak on my behalf, or my intentions of this. I will be the first to say that the master plan does address specific areas, identified areas for redevelopment. That is the intention, and once those zoning ordinances are in place based on the master plan, I will be the first to put them into motion to repeal this. Thank you.
Posey.
Matt, can you give us a clear answer as to whether or not you believe the master plan does or does not address this?
Concerning individual business types, that is much more specific than what the comprehensive plan looks at. The comprehensive plan does look at several areas across our city, including Warner Road, and encourages redevelopment efforts to take place here in the long term.
Another question for you. From a zoning officer standpoint, I think what we're headed toward with a lot of these things with zoning ordinances, conditional use, where you send out a postcard inviting people to come and discuss about this business and we'll be here. From a zoning officer standpoint, which one would be the most effective? This moratorium or a new zoning ordinance calling for conditional use?
Well, it's my understanding that the moratorium would hit the pause button on these businesses until we've had sufficient enough time to look at all angles as it refers to the zoning ordinance. Simultaneously, Mr. Shaw introduced a zoning amendment that came before the Planning and Zoning Commission last month that seeks to address these types of businesses. So, you know, it's a policy call of the council at this point. We will do our best to enforce zoning either way it goes.
And the third point, and I would ask Casey if you would consider this as an amendment. I do not like number 3 under section 2, and the fact that it does not allow a person that has a business here to move within that. I feel like if you've got the business here now, that you should be allowed to continue in Hoover if you did need to move to another location. I don't think it's it's in our best interest to do that. You know, you have folks here that you've had your business in Hoover here for a while, and giving them the opportunity to live and grow, I think is a good thing. I can understand that, you know, you might be for not having more competition come in, but they're here, I feel like you need to be grandfathered and allowed to move, and I think that's a fair compromise on this to do that. I just, overall, if we're looking to change the zoning law, I've always felt like a moratorium, like you said, is an umbrella to a point in time, but if you're looking to change the zoning law, you're looking to do so next month. Are we passing something to get to next month? And then when that zoning law is heard, and you have a second reading, and it's adopted ordinance, you're gonna be charged with putting that out there and hearing those cases, and then we're gonna have a conditional use. And zoning ordinance is a permanent solution to this issue. You're not thinking a lot of people that put these in place are looking to do so with the zoning ordinance. I think the question is, are you, I know it's our call, but as an expert, do you feel like what is written in the past is, we put that in there, we go with it, or is, you would ask for some money to look over all the zoning laws, which one's best?
That's a loaded question.
Yeah, it is.
I'm sure he'll take the money.
We'll be glad to take the money and work on it. Well, like I said, we do have a zoning amendment that I believe we're down for a first reading tonight. The Planning and Zoning Commission approved that amendment. It does not call for conditional use approval anymore for these businesses, but rather, given the spatial buffering requirements between these businesses and residential districts and these businesses between one another, the Planning and Zoning Commission felt that that was sufficient, that another step or hurdle for conditional use approval was not necessary given those distance requirements. So it kind of depends on if the council likes what they see as to whether or not we go forward with that, or if we need some more time to work on it.
Well, I'll put this out there in our yield, because I know that a lot of people are going to speak, and I'd ask you to consider this in your comments. Do you favor, because one way or the other this is going to be regulated, do you favor the moratorium, or do you favor the legislation that will be introduced tonight as first reading and voted on next month? And think about that, because what that's going to do is it's going to put a spatial buffer on you, whereas this would say no more.
Mr. Posey, if I may, I'd ask for you not to reconsider that question and not necessarily put a city staff in between.
I'm not asking Mac, I'm just asking the folks that are going to come and talk about it later. I think it's fair to them to ask the question.
Anything else from me?
No, you're fine.
Mr. Posey, if I could interrupt your time just a little bit, there is one case in point. Right now, there are two pawn shops in Hoover. One that's located on Highway 31, the building has been sold out from under through no fault of their own. Another gentleman's going to come in and bring business over several lots in that area. And they're going to have to look for a new home. Once this goes into place, they're going to have to move elsewhere or close and distribute their assets to other stores that they own and maintain. I guess I just wanted to have that in the record. Anything else, Mr. Posey?
No.
Okay. I have a question, Mr. Floyd. When it comes to the vape, just about every convenience store in the city sells it. What I see when I travel and go inside and buy my Diet Coke, which I'm so famous for. How would this moratorium deal with a convenience store who doesn't have it but wants to start? And are we going to need to have a record of all the convenience stores that do sell vaping materials, whatever it is we use?
My understanding is no, that this moratorium is intended only to apply to businesses whose primary business activity is on the lifestyle.
So, if let's talk about payday lenders. A lot of these payday lenders, from what I understand, the state passed a law a couple years ago requiring use of a database. And because of that, it's driven a lot of people, where they can't use the product, so they have gotten, small loan licenses and mini code licenses. How would the main use be determined by the dollars invested in the money's loan, or the size of the payments, or the length of the payments? How would you determine the primary use?
I think that'd be by the codes that were platform permit, and again, back to the primary business issue,
Right.
but it'd be a fact question.
Right, but small loan and mini code loans are not included in the resolution. So if they have more dollars loan, but the yield is less, say through a mini code loan of $1,500, and you're doing a payday loan that's capped, I think at $400. $500? Okay, $500. Is the majority of their business going to be the mini code, or is it going to be the payday?
Again, I can't answer a hypothetical fact question, I'll be happy to look at that.
Well, that has to be determined to determine if they're in violation. That's not.
You say so, I think that's.
No, I'm asking.
And I'm asking, that would be a question for staff.
If
Interpret the-
if in your legal opinion, you're saying it has to be the primary use, how do you determine primary use when it comes to various forms of lending?
Again, I think it just goes down to the business application. It talks about a moratorium on business licenses for primary business activity.
Okay. Any other questions from the council?
Mr. Posey mentioned an amendment. Mr. Posey, I have no problem with this body making amendments to the resolution, if they so choose.
I just think it's fair to the folks that are already here to remove that number 3 under section 2. Not putting anybody out of business if they move by taking that out.
All right, don't hear anything else from the council. Anyone from the audience? Could you please give us your name and address, please?
So my name is Fran Bishop. And I represent the National Pawnbrokers Association as their past president. And
Past?
Yes, sir. But they
Didn't y'all
still
just-
keep me around.
Didn't y'all just have a convention here in Hoover?
Yes, sir, and I'm also past president of the Alabama Pawnbrokers Association, and I currently serve in a government relations liaison capacity for both of those associations.
Make sure when you go back to the microphone, speak good and loud for all those playing the game at home.
Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I am not from Hoover. I am not.
Name and address, please.
Oh, yes, sir. Fran Bishop, 354 Arnold Road, Phil Campbell, Alabama, 35581.
You got one of those, square away.
A Phil Campbell?
No, Arnold Road.
Oh, an Arnold Road, okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Actually, I'm also on the board of directors of the Chamber of Commerce of Haleville, Alabama, the home of 911.
Exactly.
There you go. I have to get that in. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak to Resolution 5887-18. We as an industry, the traditional pawn shop industry, has been following this discussion since we saw it on media reports, television, over a month ago. And coincidentally, as you remarked, we just had our Alabama Pawnbrokers Association annual meeting here in Hoover, once again, which we do annually about every year for the last 10 years or more at the Winfrey. We hold this as an educational session. We believe in continuing education for the pawnbrokers and their businesses. We have pawnbrokers that come statewide here to Hoover. We have guest speakers that come from out of state. And just to throw a number in, just today, we spent over $5,000 at the Winfrey for our meeting. So we are bringing revenue, which I know every city is interested in, and to Hoover, and have done it annually. So coincidentally, therefore, I was here and I stayed over. And I distributed some pawn industry information to you, and I am glad to answer any questions or elaborate on any of that information.
President, I may ask Ms. Bishop a question.
Yes.
As I stated earlier, this is a business ordinance.
Yes.
Or a resolution in many ways, and
Yes.
in my opinion, it's an anti-business ordinance. So I'm curious, what's the chances you guys bring your convention back to Hoover if this passes?
None. We discussed that today, actually. It was on the agenda. We are concerned that a federally regulated, state licensed, regulated, and examined industry has been dropped into a basket of businesses that are seemingly unwelcome and undesirable by the city of Hoover. There are, as you mentioned, only 2 traditional pawn shops in Hoover, and both of them have been here for a great number of years. These stores provide financial services to the citizens of Hoover, Hoover residents, and those that travel here. I spoke with both of those operations today to get an idea of how many of their customers are Hoover residents. The one store told me about 90%, the other about 75 to 80. So what you are doing by putting a moratorium on our business, and the restriction that if we have to move the location, just as Mr. Smith referred to, we have one, Frank Evans, Quick Pawn, who is currently looking for a location. I think he's already tried to come up with one that didn't seem to work out, and he still has his lease. He will be there until he has to move, but as you I definitely noticed there's a problem with that. These businesses pay taxes. They employ individuals who live in Hoover. They participate in city services and city operations. We work with law enforcement on a daily basis. We electronically report all transactions, and I don't know of any other business that works in that same manner, hand in hand with the police department. I would ask, at the very least, that you table this motion and individually take each of these businesses on a separate basis and do more research before you enact something of this nature, which is a blanket moratorium. I would ask you to reconsider and table. I welcome your questions, and I thank you for your interest.
Questions for the young lady?
Yes, Mr. President.
Oh, yeah.
Based,
I'll buy you that back.
based on similar moratoriums in other areas around here, how has that affected your business? You had a convention today, I'm sure you discussed some of the ones, say, Alabaster's moratorium, or the town, I can't remember which one. But how's that affected your business?
I don't know of one there.
Isn't there one? Is it Alabaster?
I know Paul has one.
That one has one, so that didn't, you know, how
Well,
does it affect that one?
No, we haven't had any problem that has been brought to my attention about it. But as this goes on, and, I mean, as according to Google, Hoover is the 6th largest city in the state. And, you know, it is kind of, it's growing, and if we don't get a handle on it and get an understanding between city government and the pawn industry of exactly what it is that we do, I would invite, you know, it's just gonna get worse. And when I sent it to our regulatory council in Washington DC, the word that came back was, "I'm appalled."
I feel like 2 weeks is ample time to maybe sit down and talk to everybody. What is considered?
I'm welcome, I'm open to a work session or, you know, answering any questions, providing any additional information that you might require.
Any other questions? Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else care to speak? Singer, come on down. Hold on.
Thank you for the Arnold Singer, 613 Liberty Place. I'll be short, and I'll repeat what I said last time the subject came up. I'm opposed to moratoriums of any kind. Back in, I believe it was 1977 or 78, there was a sewer moratorium in parts of Hoover. Baptist Medical Center had 40 acres where they were going to be building a hospital that we still do not have after all these years. And they could not wait for the sewer situation to be straightened out. The other thing that I feel about this particular situation is it sounds to me almost like spot zoning. And that is definitely something that I'm opposed to.
Thank you, sir. As for Princeton, if I recall right, it was then Governor Bob Riley killed that certificate of need. Sorry?
This was before that. This was supposed to be Riverside.
Oh, the one that yeah, that does get back.
That was 1977 for a long time.
Right here then. In spirit. Anyone else care to speak? Yes, sir. Come down. Please provide your name and address.
Hey guys, Randy Toffel, 4846 Sulphur Springs Road here in Hoover. I also am pathology at On Water Road. I am one of the proliferation is a word that there are more shops that have opened up here in the city of Hoover. A couple of them just very recently. There's 3 shops on Hoover on Water Road. There's my shop, there's Royal Tobacco and Vape Outlet, I believe it's I don't even remember the name of it. Gallery Center. It's on there. So there's 3 shops on one road. There's one where Dolce Vita used to be. There's one next to Buffalo Wild Wings, which is a vape estate. We bought out Dixie Vape, that went out of business. Smoking Vapors, that was on Water Road, went out of business. They went out of business due to the FDA and their regulations that have been passed regarding e-liquids and their production. They were a company that produced their own e-liquids and manufactured. They didn't have the money to file to keep their business going. So, I'm here today because I'm concerned. I'm concerned that if something happened at my shopping center, that I wouldn't be able to relocate. I've been in business for 4.5 years. And now my city's going to tell me that I'm not wanted, that my business is no longer good, and that I'm not providing a valuable service. A month ago, I invited all of y'all to come to my shop. Please come and see. I've had 2 people in my shop. person respond to me, I'll see. Mike Shaw's been, John Lykes been. You responded to me by email with what I said. I sent you information regarding what the Royal College of Physicians has put out regarding vaping, and I hope you took the time to read it. This month is Stop Oktoberfest, and they're advocating for their citizens to please quit smoking and to please take up vaping, because it certainly hasn't been proven that it causes no harm. It's been significantly proven that it causes way less harm and certainly no harm for people around. So I'm concerned about this moratorium, and that's why I'm here. Any questions?
Thank you, sir. Thanks. Anyone else? Anyone else on the council?
Mr. President, let me make a quick comment. First of all, thank you so much for everyone sending me emails and sending me information. I took some time to read and study and things of that nature. Thank you so much to Mr. Lyda, Mr. Shaw. I'm a true capitalist and I love the flea market. Matter of fact, I own a business here in the region, and I really don't like government telling me what to do. I just really don't like that. But in many cases, I think that sometimes, in very few cases, capitalism collides with culture, right? You know, that has happened over a period of time, we gotta be honest. When smoking could not be in restaurants, when smoking could not be in buildings, we regulated strip clubs. Getting back to Arnold single point, you don't want moratoriums or anything, so strip clubs will be acceptable. Not something I started, it's something that our forefathers and mothers started years ago with regulations. But the rotor of our community is based upon family values. And those are the things that make certain things come into place. Regardless, we call them moratoriums, ordinances, it regulates. I serve them B&Z board. We regulate the signs you can put up on your sign, how tall they can be, how much grass you're gonna have, how many trees you need to have. So we have regulations on certain things. So last thing I'll say on that end, you know, when I'm making any type of decision, especially when it comes to this, you know, I always look at it from the standpoint of the 10th Amendment, because from that standpoint, we don't have to be like Miami. We don't have to be like Birmingham. We don't have to be like any other city. We're Hoover, and there's a certain rotor that regulates us, all right? And that's based upon family values and things that have already been regulated in our cities. So with that being said, I do believe that I'd like to make how should that go about, Mr. President, if I want to make a amendment?
You would make an amendment.
All right, okay, just want to make sure I got the language right. Okay, motion to amend the ordinance to omit, exclude 3 in section 2 on page 2. Not numbered, but the second page, section 2, 3 be omitted from that. I can concur with Councilman Posey that it's probably a probability standpoint of 0.001% chance of something may burn down. But for a person to be able to move, they need to be able to do that. But up under the ordinance that's being passed, some areas won't be able to move in anyway once things occur. So it's not a free fall either way it goes. So I would like to make that a point if I can get a second.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to amend the resolution by eliminating on page 2, section 2, item number 3. Any questions or comments?
More discussion, Mr.
To
President.
amend.
More discussion.
Sorry?
May I have more discussion?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Murphy, our current smoking ordinance is lauded by those anti-smoking organizations as one of the weakest in the state of Alabama. You know how many restaurants allow smoking in Hoover? You yield your time, I'll comment. 0. You know how many bars allow smoking in Hoover? 0. Our ordinance doesn't prohibit it. The free market regulates it. If Bluff Park Diner tonight were to decide to allow smoking, they'd go out of business. It doesn't take big government coming in and telling businesses how to operate. This is not about the free market. We heard recently a fiscal conservative stand here and propose a $22 million tax increase. Words are one thing, actions are another. Our actions will speak louder than our words tonight. I yield to that.
Any other comments or questions from the council? From the audience?
Mr. President,
Yes, sir, Mr. Posey.
I think what we're looking at here is we're gonna pass one or the other. And November 5th is when yours is going to be heard, is that correct? Yeah, okay, so we're gonna pass something. Is it in our best interest to continue this until that meeting and
How about,
decide?
since you're talking about another amendment
It
at
is
this
another
point, why don't we vote the amendment on the table first and then take up Hoover's second?
Sure,
Sound fair?
that's fair.
Ms. Clerk? Yes, sir, Ms. Shaw? Oh, Mr. Schultz. No, sir, you can't vote. On down. This is on the amendment or on the original resolution?
Mr. Lyda's statement, Hoover's ordinance 08-2168 prohibits smoking in the city of Hoover. So that is a Hoover ordinance, not a ordinance that was as something that the business can do. That is a Hoover ordinance passed on October 1st, 2008, to correct the record there.
Okay. Madam Clerk, please call the roll. This is on the amendment removing item 3.
Mr. Green? Mr. Lydic?
Nay.
Dr. Middlebrooks?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Posey?
Aye.
Mr. Shaw?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye. Okay, the amendment is accepted. Now, we either vote the resolution as amended, or, Mr. Posey, you had something else you wanted.
Yes, sir, I'm looking at possible continuous until the November 5th meeting, two side by side. I think if you're gonna make a law, and you're gonna pass a law with these two options, it makes more sense to me to consider one or the other, one option. Because if you put this in law today, and then you vote this with this next one through the next meeting, then you repeal this, because you can have a moratorium for a year and then have the zoning ordinance that regulates. So let's consider them side by side, that's what I'm requesting.
Mr. Smith, may I respond?
Yes,
Mr. Posey, I would be opposed to continuing this. We have all these people here tonight. I don't know if they will necessarily come back in 2 weeks again, sit through this lovely, lovely time. But in regards to that, Mr. Shaw's zoning amendment, I'm still a proponent of allowing the holistic process of a complete, looking at all of our zoning ordinances, subdivision regulations as a whole. And then once that is passed, I will be the first to put up for repeal of this temporary moratorium should it pass. But until we take a holistic approach, I cannot be in favor of repealing this process. So I would prefer that we continue to vote on this tonight.
Mr. Posey, is yours in the form of a motion?
I do respect what you're saying, Casey, I do understand. But I would motion for this to be continued to the November 5th meeting where it can be heard in congruence with the other ordinance we're taking up this time.
Did you have a second? Hearing none. Get back to the original question. I think we have discussed this in great detail and length, and ask the clerk to call the roll. Passage as amended.
Aye.
Mr. Lyda?
Nay.
Councilman Brooks?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Posey?
Aye.
Mr. Shaw?
Nay.
Mr. Smith?
Nay. The resolution is passed. Item 17 is ABC application for Dave and Buster's of Alabama Inc., doing business as Dave and Buster's, 2000 Chase Galleria, Suite on 10. Mr. Shaw.
Mr. President, I move for approval of the ABC application for Dave and Buster's of Alabama Incorporated.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions from the council? From the audience? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item 18 is an ABC application for B&B Bartending LLC, doing business as, originally,
Hoover SFM.
Hoover SFM.
Mr. President, I move for approval of the ABC application for B&B Bartending DBA Hoover SFM.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions from the council? From the audience? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item 19, second reading of ordinance 18-2406. Mr. Porter.
This ordinance rearranges, alters, and extends the city's corporate limits to include real property located at 853 Willow Oak Drive, known as Old River Chase Middle School, owned by the Hoover City Board of Education, and as shown on the map attached to the ordinance. This is phase one of a multi-stage annexation.
Mr. President, I move for the adoption of ordinance number 18-2406.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions from the council? This is going to be for the new career campus that the school purchased in River Chase. Any comments or questions from the council, from the audience? Seeing and hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Green?
Aye.
Mr. Lyda?
Aye.
Councilman Brooks?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Posey?
Aye.
Mr. Shaw?
Aye.
Aye. Item 20 is first reading of ordinance 18-2407. Mr. Corley.
This ordinance rearranges, alters, and extends the city's corporate limits to include property owned by the Hoover City Board of Education, as shown on the map attached to the ordinance. This is phase two of a multi-stage annexation. For the second reading of this ordinance, consideration for adoption will be on November 5th, 2008.
As stated, the second reading will be at our next regular meeting. Item 21, first reading of ordinance 18-2408. Mr. Corley.
This ordinance extends the use of the city's rights-of-way to AT&T Alabama for the IP-enabled video services for an additional 5 years through December 31st, 2023. This ordinance also authorizes the mayor to execute an addendum to the video services agreement and substantially the form attached to the ordinance, as Exhibit A. The second reading of this ordinance and consideration for adoption will be on Monday, November 5th, 2019.
As stated, this will also be at our next regular meeting. Next, we're going to have a public hearing. Next, we have first reading. Next is a public hearing to consider the request of Design Div 01 Inc. conditional use approval to allow the construction of a parking lot on 1.239 acres of property located at 1834 Montgomery Highway, Chase Corporate Center. This is for the purpose of providing additional parking for the business located at 1870 Chase Drive. The owner of the property is Chase Corporate Center LLC. The property is owned PO Planned Office District. Anyone here to speak for or against? Yes, sir, come on down. Get here, if you give us your name and address, please.
My name is Hassan Deb. I live at 1512 Scoutridge Drive, Hoover, Alabama. Okay, the reason we leased the property behind us to expand our parking lot because we have two vacant spaces that we cannot lease because of the lack of parking space. So please consider, I think we got it approved from the zoning committee before this last month, and River Chase also approved it.
Just that he is correct, the planning commission approved this conditional use, made the recommendation to the council to approve it, their September meeting. And just for reference, the parking lot is to the rear of the building he owns, near Chase Lake. And, River Chase did approve this, improvement on the property.
Questions for Mr. Martin?
Yes, sir, Mr. Martin. Will that affect the entrance into Chase Lake at all as far as the, they have a very aesthetic looking entrance there.
Right. We've worked with Mr. Deeb as well as River Chase to ensure that it meets our landscape criteria. And of course, River Chase, they look at the aesthetic nature of it as well. The parking lot will actually be accessed from the existing parking lot, Mr. Deep's strip center. So it will not access directly onto the public roadway.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. President, I just want to commend Mr. D. I think it was probably 2 years ago, you and I walked around the building and looked at the trees and there and talked about this. So this has been a great need for quite a while. I just want to thank you for investing further in that development. In case my colleagues don't know, Mr. D owns that entire strip there, from Legacy Credit Union all the way back. So thank you for the further improvements you're making. We really appreciate that.
Any other questions?
Mr. President, I would add to that, I did that the city had a very grueling process to go through all with the county and the River Chase and everything. I think it was continued twice or something like that. So it took a lot of work just to get through the paperwork. So thank you for being persistent. It looks like it's going to be pretty good.
Anything from the audience? This is a public hearing. Anything from the audience? All right. Mr. Corley?
Mr. President, I move to approve the conditional use to allow construction of a parking lot for Real One Incorporated.
Second.
Motion and second. Any comments or questions from the council, from the audience? Is this an ordinance or is this conditional use? Very good, so there's no need for a roll call. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed nay. The ayes have it. Item 23, once again, a public hearing to consider the request of U.S. Steel and Dr. P. Lawrence Savage, Jr., representing Spine and Sports Properties, LLC, for approval of the 14th Amendment to the Trace Crossings PUD to add recently annexed property approximately 0.62 acres located at 118 Mars Hill Road, rezone from Jefferson County CP Preferred Commercial to Trace Crossings PUD PC Planned Commercial District. The owner property is owned by Spine and Sports Properties LLC. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone to speak for or against? Yes, sir, come on down. Provide your name and address.
Mr. Smith, before you begin,
Yes,
I'm sorry. Seeing as there's nothing else per se controversial on the agenda, I'm gonna have to ask to be dismissed. My wife's still recovering from her back surgery and she needs it.
Yes, sir.
Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen.
You are dismissed. Let the record say so. Yes, sir.
Steve Monk, 1819 Fifth Avenue North, Birmingham. I am here on behalf of the applicant, Spine and Sports Properties. They acquired, say, 0.62 acre tract of land. Some time ago, that property was originally in unincorporated Jefferson County, annexed into the city of Hoover, probably in early summer. And we are now here to add that property as well as the 2 other parcels that this same entity bought. We want to add those to the Trace Crossings PUD as a planned commercial development.
Is there anyone here representing the PUD to state that you want them in there?
I can say that I can also represent U.S. Steel in saying that they have signed the PUD ordinance, and the amendment for the PUD.
Conflict?
No.
I have a few things I need. Any questions from the council? This is a public hearing first. Anything from the audience? second reading of ordinance 18-2403.
This ordinance rezones .62 acres recently annexed into the city of Hoover and located at 118 Marshall Road from Jefferson County CP, referred commercial to Trace Crossings PUD-PC, same commercial district. This property is owned by Spine Sports Properties LLC.
I move for approval, or I move for adoption of ordinance number 18-2403.
Second.
Have a motion second. Any comments or questions from the council? Any from the audience? Seeing and hearing none, Madam Clerk, if you please call the roll.
Mr. Green?
Aye.
Mr. Wyatt?
Aye.
Dr. Hoover? Mr. Murphy? Mr. Posey?
Aye.
Mr. Shaw?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye. Ordinance is adopted. Item 25 is a public hearing, again, to consider the request of the city of Hoover to rezone 259.2 acres of recently annexed property owned by the Freshwater Land Trust located between Ross Bridge Parkway and Chase Crest Road from Jefferson County I-3 Industrial and A1 Agricultural to Hoover A1 Agricultural District. This is a public hearing. Anyone to speak for or against? Short public hearing. Mr. Corley, second reading of ordinance 18-2405.
This ordinance rezones 259.2 acres of recently annexed property owned by the Freshwater Land Trust located between Ross Bridge Parkway and Chase Crest Road from Jefferson County I-3 Industrial and A1 Agriculture to Hoover A1 Agriculture District.
Once again, any questions from the council or the audience? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Just to confirm, this is 18-2405, correct?
Yes.
Mr. President, I move for adoption of ordinance number 18-2405.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, if you would.
Mr. Green?
Aye.
Mr. Wyatt?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Posey?
Aye.
Mr. Shaw?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
I'm gonna go back to the-
Yeah, that was the question.
Sure. They probably would like it. Public hearing to consider a proposed amendment to the municipal code appendix I, zoning article 7, supplemental regulations, section 5.0G, accessory structures. This is a public hearing. Mark.
Yes, the proposed amendment coming before you this evening for consideration is to amend the portion of our zoning ordinance that deals with accessory structures, and namely how we, as city officials, calculate the amount of square footage available to a property owner for accessory structures. Right now, we view that the ordinance is prohibitive, particularly for those who have oddly shaped pieces of property. The current zoning ordinance requires that we take 15% of the required rear yard, so the portion of the property within the rear setback. We are to take 15% of that, and that is the cap for accessory structures. And again, we find in several situations where this is very prohibitive. I do have an example that I can put up on the board. So you'll notice this is an example of a subdivision that we considered not too terribly long ago. But you'll notice the lots within the subdivision have various shapes, various sizes. But I want to point out in particular the rear yards and the rear lot lines are not consistent throughout. And that's what you're going to find across the city of Hoover in future subdivisions and those that are already in place. So if we're taking 15% of the required rear yard, which is the rear setback measured off of the rear property line, we're taking 50% or 15% of that square footage to determine how much accessory building space people have. You'll notice right off the bat, some of these lots have very narrow, very small rear yards as measured off of the rear property boundaries. Primarily because some of these properties have very small rear property boundaries. Take for example, these guys right here. Now, under our current code, This example, lot 73, may have a lot more area to the rear of the house that's built on there, more so than, say, lot 72 or lot 71. But because the rear property boundary is only 45 feet, give or take, and that area, that required rear yard is smaller than what you would find on, say, 72 or 71. Lots 71 and 72 have the ability to enjoy more accessory building space than, say, that much larger lot 73. So what we're proposing is that the amendment would take, instead of the required rear setback, 15% of that, we would take 15% of the rear yard as defined from the rear of the principal building or home on the site all the way back to the rear property boundary. This, we feel, staff feels, is a more even-handed approach to where people can enjoy the amount of accessory structure based on the size of their lot more so than based on the size of their rear property boundary and the corresponding setback. So again, just to reiterate, our current ordinance, in our estimation, is overly burdensome for those, especially that have very narrow lots. Even if they're very large lots, if they're very narrow in nature, they're penalized more than those that have wider lots, even if those with wider lots have less acreage. So this, to us, is a little bit more even-handed in how we treat that. I'm familiar with doing this in other municipalities, so we're comfortable promoting this amendment, and the Planning Commission unanimously supported it.
Mr. President, I have a question. This is a request to amend the zoning ordinance, correct?
That's correct.
Because it's addressing a particular issue in the city.
That's correct.
All right. And I wish Dr. Middlebrooks hadn't left, but I don't want to harp on this too much, but notice what we're doing here. We're amending the zoning code. You know, there was no big, long, holistic, comprehensive planning process. We saw a need, we're fixing it. And that's what we're charged to do by state law. And that's what we're charged to do by the people who elected us. And like I said, I don't want to harp too much on this because Dr. Middlebrooks had to leave, but this could very easily negatively impact an older neighborhood with an oddly shaped lot. There could be a compelling case made. We need to stop the holistic process, make sure that we're not going to negatively impact someone. Don't get me wrong, I'm in favor of this ordinance, but we have to make these decisions. And we have to, this is what we're charged to do. We're charged to do our job. Planning and zoning makes a zoning amendment change. Council approves it, and then we move on to enforcing the law. So I'm in favor of this, but this is a classic example of we do our jobs. We approve zoning changes. We don't have to, I'm all for the comprehensive planning process, but to say we have to stop for some big long process, this is exactly what we're charged to do. I'm in favor of this ordinance, but we can make the same exact arguments. I know in Montedero there's some things going on in some backyards that this could affect. Do we need to stop, put the brakes on, wait for a full comprehensive process and then get in the way of what you're trying to accomplish? I don't think so. I'm not in favor of that. We can deal with that on a case-by-case basis. But like I said, I wish Dr. Middlebrooks was still here because this is a classic example of how we can discuss why I think we do need to have the ability to change the zoning laws after necessary. Thank you, Mr. President.
This is a public hearing. Any other comments or questions? Yes, sir. Please come down and give your name and address.
My name is David Sprouse, 4565 McGill Terrace, Hoover. And I have such project, as Mr. Martin has mentioned, that I've been waiting on since July to get the permit approved. I'm just here to voice my being in favor of this permit. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Shaw, Mr. Green had asked, could you restate?
Could you summarize that
You
for me, please?
really want me to start talking again?
If you could summarize that for me in 3 or 4 sentences, it would help.
All right. What we're doing right now is we're amending the zoning code, which is what we're talking about doing with the vaping and thing. The case was made that we need to stop and wait for a holistic process to amend the zoning code. And without that process for this, whereas this could have a negative impact on certain backyards. I mean, I trust Mr. Martin. I think it makes a lot of logical sense what we're about to do, but I feel that's our job and our responsibility to approve these ordinances and think them through and do that. Whatever side parallel holistic process we have for that, I don't think can stop us from moving forward with these types of things. So my point was is that we're about to do the same thing we just said we need to wait on a process for. So, was that a little better?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
So are you asking to table until the comprehensive plan is ready?
No, Mr. President.
All right. Gentlemen's hearts keep a beat.
And Mr. President, just one quick question.
Yes, sir.
It won't take long. From a technical standpoint, different things are done for different reasons around that. Have we discussed this with any builders that have been going for quite periods of time, like engineering? Tim, have you?
I'll put it this way, we have had numerous cases coming before the Board of Zoning Adjustment for this very reason.
Okay, so you have back history. Thank you.
Yes, and typically what we found is.
Mr. Mag, you answer my question.
All right.
I don't want to hold anyone.
Saving your voice. Anything else? Audience? All right, this ends the public hearing. And next, we have the second reading of ordinance 18-2404. Mr. Corley.
This ordinance amends the Hoover zoning code related to accessory structures as set forth in the ordinance to provide that accessory buildings and structures, one, shall not be located to the front of a principal building or in a required yard setback. Two, shall not occupy more than 15% of the rear yard as measured from the rearmost point of the wall of the principal building to the rear property line. Three, shall in no instance be nearer than 5 feet to any side or rear lot line, and four, shall be at least 5 feet from any other structure.
Mr. President, I move for adoption of ordinance number 18-2404.
Have a motion and a second. Mr. Lytle, could you tell us what Mr. Shaw meant?
I have no idea. Was it that bad?
No, I just want to get in. Any comments, questions from the council? From the audience? Seeing and hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Aye.
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 Aye. Item 26 is set public hearings for Monday, November 5th at 6 o'clock here in the chambers to consider the following requests which come forward from planning and zoning with positive recommendations. Item A, Mr. Jim Mitchell is requesting conditional use approval, a neighborhood shopping center to be located at 1801 Doug Baker Boulevard. This property is owned by Millennial Bank, FKA, formerly known as Covenant Bank, and is zoned C2 Community Business District. Item B, Mr. William Silver, U.S. Steel Corporation, is requesting the following with regard to the preserved PUD. One, Second Amendment to the preserved PUD to rezone property to the north of the existing town center from PR1 planned single family to PC planned commercial, and amend the development criteria for the town center area zone PC planned commercial to permit the following. A, permit adjustments to the distribution of space dedicated to retail and office uses prescribed in the First Amendment, but to maintain the overall cap of 88,170 square feet of commercial space approved in the First Amendment. Item B, permit an increase of single tenant space from 15,000 square feet maximum to 29,000 square feet maximum for grocery tenants only. And C, establish an undisturbed buffer just south of the boulder field. All other development requirements, criteria prescribed for the PC planned commercial zone in the First Amendment shall apply to the property rezoned to PC planned commercial in this request. Mr. Corley, a first reading of 18, or is that going to be on the 5th? Is that tonight or the 5th?
First reading tonight.
All right, that's what I thought. If you would, first reading of ordinance 18-2409.
This ordinance amends ordinance number 263, the zoning ordinance of the city of Hoover, Alabama, by rezoning the property shown on the map attached to the ordinance from PR1, or planned single family district, to PC, planned commercial district.
Item 2, conditional use approval to A, permit mixed-use development within the PC plan commercial zone to include detached and attached residential dwellings north of the town center and upper floor housing within the town center per the conceptual plan, and B, extend the conditions placed on the PC plan commercial zone in the First Amendment to the additional property to rezone the PC plan commercial. This is probably not the right time for this, but we've been getting some inundations, Mr. Mayor. Seems there's an email campaign going around wanting the city to purchase 8 acres from USX to help protect the buffer for the boulder field.
Mr. President, Ms. Martin, could we pull up the, looks like number 5 there? Is that the edited, the updated one?
Well, I know as we've established before, with issues such as this, the applicant does have a presentation. Go through here on first read.
Yes,
if
sir.
you'd like.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
One thing, the map that was a pretty complicated motion to get that map right. We didn't get the map set later to indicate where the buffer is.
Good evening. I'm Peter Alsop, representing U.S. Steel Real Estate. Address is 610 Reserve Parkway, Hoover. The area of the town center has been consistently on plans for 15 years and was envisioned even before that. As the plan came forward, as shown on slide 2, it was a mix of commercial and residential uses that are kind of vague in the map. But from that map, we created a zoning line that is now part of the GIS zoning. You can see a red outline which extends that PC zoning back all the way to the green area, which is the reserve. The reason for that was that we have now got a pretty good shot at attracting a grocery store. And this particular piece of property has probably had more charrettes than almost any 8 acres in the city of Hoover. You can go next slide. This is the most recent one that we worked with, and the proposed grocery store is approximately 29,000 square feet, as shown, with small shops that would mirror what is on the other side of Reserve Parkway, including the U.S. Steel building. The rest of the area has a mix of the same live-work units, residential, and we haven't quite determined how to make all the residential work, so we have requested it be both attached and detached sort of product. One of the key things that has moved the plan is the need for additional parking. Presently, infill-type smaller grocers need usually 5 spaces per 1,000 instead of 4 that was approved in the zoning. But it also has to be very close to where the store is. We can't count the spaces that are really being provided over by the reserve for reserve users. And that kind of pushes that original line back into what was originally envisioned as a buffer area. As we got into the discussion, everyone said, well, it's not going to be taking a lot of land from the reserve. And we all know how important that is to this development and the city together. So in discussions with Mac and his staff and also the planning P&Z board members, we established a minimum area that we felt could be committed to permanent green space in time. But that area is not something we are planning right this second. The area in the front was always on the plan, and in fact, the area that we were taking off the plan, back to the original plan, had houses right up where the boulders were because it hadn't been surveyed and people didn't know where they were at that time. So now what happens is that we agree that that area needs more of a considerable amount of grading that has to happen here to make property to generate fill for another area of the preserve that's purely residential. In looking at that, we saw an area that we really need to put a slope easement on that creates the loop road that comes up to where the Hoover Preserve parking is, over in that upper corner there. And
Sir, could I ask you a question real quick while you're on this slide? Where the property line comes to a point,
yes,
what is the buffer between that point and back of the development?
it's very small.
Right. I was just wondering how small.
I don't have a figure yet, and this is again very conceptual still in nature, so.
How small do you think it
Could be 20 feet, 20 to 30 feet. On the other hand, let's say that in that area of preserve, it immediately becomes a sloping woods that really is not going to be impacted by putting a buffer on a 350 acre buffer. I think the more important thing is now we're looking for a better result and putting that small area of land. Frankly, I don't know why they put the corner there 28 years ago, whenever that all started. But by having having a better buffer over by the boulders, and also having a potentially really great trailhead for that area, I think that's a pretty fair trade-off too.
You know, the microphone a little closer.
Yeah.
30,000 people watching at home.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
No sweat.
No sweat. So that was what came out of the discussions with the planners, and they had the same concern, but I don't think that is a detriment to that part of the preserve, and it really will end up enhancing kind of a more unique and important part of it as well. And most importantly, our neighbors really want to have a grocery store, and we didn't just willy-nilly put it back that far. We tried with a little scaled sticky note, putting it all over the 8 acres to see where we can get the parking and how do you get cars and food delivery trucks and in and out in a way that's going to work. And so that's what really brought us to this configuration.
If I can comment on that real quick, that was exactly the discussion on planning and zoning, was that there was a buffer back there, but really living there, the buffer is not nearly as important as acquiring that additional buffer next to the boulder field. So just kind of give it a take, and that's what that came from.
And so really what we're doing is taking an area that's always looked about the same, and we have all the ingredients, the same amount of ingredients, we're just mixing it up a little bit differently so that we can go out and attract this potential grocer that our neighbors will say they want there. And at the same time, I think it gets us closer to finishing out this vision that we've had for 15 years of a walkable village. And it also will enable the city to move forward with any amenities they want, railhead, and have a road that's a permanent road, which we haven't had. So I think it really works well. All those pieces come together quite nicely, and we're excited about it. We're very excited, particularly about getting a grocer, and I think that'll help us finish that out. All of this can happen pretty much at the same time, where the disruption of dirt moving between 2 different projects gets done at one time rather than moving it twice, which again is something I think works for the public.
Did you identify where the 8 acres in question was?
That's the box.
That's the 8 acres?
Yeah.
I don't think there's some of the 8 acres that they're talking about.
Yeah, go to the previous slide. The area where the buildings are is the 8 acres. And so some of that in that area is still residential.
Yeah, Mr. Silva's shaking his head. I think what we've been talking about getting the emails, we're talking about the 8 acres as a left. That's what.
Yeah, there is 8 acres that is available if the city wants to purchase it.
Has there been a price placed on that?
No, we just started that discussion.
Well, that direction.
And so we have shareholders who demand it.
We do appreciate that. I think we got a deal.
can work together. We've been working together.
Any questions from the council? Are you through?
I am in favor.
Mr. President, can you talk a little bit about drainage from this property?
The drainage is from the back to the front to the existing drainage system.
Okay.
And there hasn't been a revision to the engineering, but that will likely continue.
Very good, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, sir. Thank you, and we will see you again. Item C, Mr. Connor Farmer, representing Gallant Lake LLC, is requesting to rezone 2 vacant parcels located on Heatherwood Drive, situated on the southeast side of Altadena Woods subdivision from R1 Single Family District to PR1 Planned Single Family District, and incorporate into the East Heatherwood PUD, which is located on the west side of Caldwell Mill Road. These 2 parcels are intended to be included in a proposed 5-lot subdivision within the East Heatherwood PUD. Mr. Corley, first reading of ordinance 18-2410.
This ordinance amends the city zoning ordinance by rezoning the property shown on the map attached to the ordinance from R1 to PR1 Planned Single Family District.
I would assume that is there a proposal for that at this time? No?
There's not a presentation, but there is a 5-lot subdivision that the property owner is proposing to develop that includes the larger tract currently in the planned unit development, the darker shade of orange, and then the smaller property that my pointer is over. That is a portion of that 5-lot subdivision. And just to have some consistency across the entire 5-lot development, we want them in the same zone. So we recommend it.
Very good. Any questions for Mr. Martin? Thank you, sir. Item D, the City of Hoover is proposing to amend the municipal code Appendix I zoning regarding, well, regarding body art establishments, pawn shops, short-term loan shops, vape and/or tobacco stores. Mr. Corley, a first reading of ordinance 18-2411.
This ordinance amends certain sections of the city zoning code regarding the location of body art establishments, pawn shops, short-term loan shops, and vape and/or tobacco stores.
Mr. Shaw, do you have anything you'd like to bring this time?
No, just briefly, since I was talking about this a lot, based on, this initiated in parallel with what Dr. Novak brought up when we had a pawn shop application for, asked to rezone some areas on Warner Road from C1 to C2. And obviously, we weren't a fan of that, but one thing we discovered was none of these businesses were named in the ordinance. And so Ms. Mark was kind of having to interpret it and say, so it started with the say, hey, we need to put about this. Long story short, or longer, the Planning and Zoning Commission had a really good meeting on this, and presented several options. We talked about several things we could do, some things we didn't like, and so the new appointees, the old appointees worked together through the process. And what we came up with was, took the conditional use aspect out. The commission felt that the restrictions were accomplished the goal and the definitions without having the conditional use. And there's really 3 things. It puts it in the C2 zoning, which is the higher level zoning. Because there is some C2 zoning close to neighborhoods, and Ms. Rice is still here, the corner right by Monty Door is a classic example of that. Little tiny plot of C2 zoning. There's a restriction of 500 feet from the residential zoning, so that in a situation where it could be right in the middle of the neighborhood, it protects that, and 1,000 feet from each other. And what the commission decided was to make that all-inclusive. And the idea is there were studies that show when you have clumps of businesses such as these together, it can be a problem. So pawn shop or a vape shop, where it could be 1,000 feet from the next one. And so that was really the three major things. I'm not sure if we have a final copy of everything. This thing, do we have that yet? Still working on it, because then we've amended it quite a bit in that process. So that was the process.
And we have a first reading if we don't have a set document. So, cannot have a first reading this evening.
Yes, it has. I thought this was setting a hearing for the first reading.
Well, yeah, tonight would have been the first reading. It's setting a public hearing for Monday the fifth. Would the fifth also been the date of the second reading and probable vote?
The ordinance that we have attached, we thought was ready for the first meeting. If there are amendments to the ordinance, then you can have another first reading at the time. So it's probably worthwhile to go ahead and have the first reading now.
Does this include the amendments that planning and zoning passed, or is there enough on the record to be? Planning and zoning passed, so there's a couple amendments. One was taking the conditional use out, and then the other was making it all inclusive. That was through the motion. Is that adequate, or does it have to be codified in the actual ordinance?
Needs to be published at the first reading in final form. So if there are changes to this ordinance.
So yeah, so if we don't have an updated copy of that, with those changes that we need to find.
So we will have the first reading. Sorry? Yes, we would have the first reading next meeting. Okay? All right. Mr. Lyda?
Yes, sir.
There's a pretty good stack of bills.
There are quite a few. Adds up to a lot of money, Mr. Smith, and I would move to be paid in full as presented.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed nay. The ayes have it. Comments or questions from the council?
Mr. President, I would, there'll be a press release, I think, coming out on this tomorrow, but October 21st, this coming Sunday at 2:30, at the Michael Jordan Room at the Hoover Met will be the first opportunity for our council and mayor to hear from the public on the hospital proposal. We'll be able to hear from primarily the Trace Crossings residents, but anyone in the city of Hoover is obviously welcome. This is a public facility and a public meeting, so anyone's welcome. But yeah, tomorrow, with the media folks, a press release will be coming out. More details on it.
Any other comments or questions?
Mr. President, I will not, actually not be able to attend that. I'm going to a conference in Japan called SUS Japan. It'll be my honor and pleasure to represent our city as part of the state delegation to, for an economic and cultural summit with people from all over the Southeast. I'm looking forward to telling everybody how awesome Hoover is and all the great things. Maybe we'll bring some folks back so they can see how great our city is. So.
You want to ask one member to try to see your first reading through?
What's that?
First reading?
Oh, I'll be back. I won't miss a council meeting, but I was saying I won't be at this 21st meeting. I'll be back next week. I'll be here.
All right.
Mrs. Chair, just letting Mr. Lytle know, I'll be probably running a little late. Group of people helping paint middle school that same day, so I may be 30 minutes or so late. Not the entire school, it's a couple of, I want to make sure.
I'll say,
No, couple conference calls to make sure I articulate that.
anything else?
Mr. President,
Oh,
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Rice, can you kind of talk us through what will be presented at this meeting, since there is no formal agreement at this time with UAB?
What will be presented?
Yes, sir.
Well, we will be ready to answer any questions that the citizens have that, make sure that everyone has the correct information. Outline the process, how we went, and how we arrived at even getting an opportunity, this fantastic opportunity to get a hospital in our city. It's a great opportunity for us to share it with our citizens. It's no secret, and we've known it for a while, but this is looking forward to it, and should be a good day.
Any other questions? Statements from the audience?
President, to make a long meeting already longer, Mr. Corley has texted me and said that the ordinance that we have actually reflects the changes in what planning and zoning said.
Okay, well then let's back up and have a first reading.
So, this first reading of ordinance number 18-2411. This ordinance amends certain sections of the city zoning code regarding the location of body art establishments, pawn shops, short-term loan shops, and vape and/or tobacco stores.
Thank you, sir. That satisfies that.
Sorry for confusion.
provide our condolences in the passing of your father.
Thank you, sir.
I know how tough that can be.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate the way you question and debate, each and every one of you. From me, I want to thank Chief Durzis and the police department, and especially from my mom, Jane Patterson, to Chief Bentley and the rescue personnel. Incredible professionals and unbelievable response times. Thank you.
Anything else from the audience? Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir, we are partnering, and wanted to, our news agencies here to make sure you get this out or help us get it out. The city's partnering with the Association of Lady Churches to gather relief supplies for the Hurricane Michael victims. Hoover Fire Department will lead our efforts, and supplies can be dropped off at all 10 fire stations. So please check our Facebook page for the list of items that can be accepted that will begin tomorrow and go through November the 2nd. So we are glad to be a part of this relief effort.
And we also have that placed on the city website?
That's correct.
Thank you. Anything else? I mean, I'm starting to feel like we're a family now. All in favor of adjourning can leave.